Hi guys, Samantha from Jessama Tutorials here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create a bead using our dead tree stamp that we made just the other day. So what we're going to be making is similar to this. This is a different colorway though, it's in the golds and browns. Today we are going to be moving towards more of a blue color, so I'll bring over what our colorway is going to look like. So I'm going to be using this ribbon. It's completely escaped my mind what it was called. I'll have to tell you whenever it comes back. But basically what I've done is I've gone and collected alcohol inks out of my collection that are going to match the colours. So I'll just show you those now. So we got Pool, put them around for you to see. And we've got silver, this one's an option, you don't have to use this one. And we've got turquoise, patina, and mermaid. And I'm still going to have to think what that was called. I'm terribly sorry, but it's like complete brain blank. So in the meantime, we'll do our stamp, and what we're going to do is we're going to spray it quite heavily with water, because otherwise your clay can end up sticking to the stamp. And I'm going to be using white Primo, and this was rolled on a thicker setting. I'm now going to take it down to my 5th setting, like that. Then we're going to place that over the stamp, gently press, and there we go. And I just remembered what the name is called. It's called Sorry Ribbon. So, sorry about that. But anyway, we'll start pressing into the stamp from one end to the other, always working from one end to the other, because this will push excess air and water out, over and out of the clay, so that you get a nice even texture. If you were just dotting it all over the place, you could accidentally trap little pockets of water and air, and then that could end up ruining your texture. So you want to just go in one direction generally. And I like to use my fingers first because I find that it just gives me a better texture. Then we bring over our acrylic roller and flatten it out. So you give it a nice big roll, and you can carry on rolling to flatten it out, but if you see your clay lifting in any areas, you need to stop rolling, because otherwise you'll get a ghost image. But you can roll so long as your clay is not lifting up. So that one didn't lift up, so that's good. Now we'll gently peel back the clay, and it should come away pretty easily. There we go. And you can see what a lovely clean texture that gives. So now we need to dry up the clay over here and the tile, because if the water's in the area, it's going to give problems later on. Okay, so here we are, now that I've finished drying it, and we're just going to trim away the excess bits, so get rid of all these straggly bits. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we are going to cut out our bead. Now we need a template for this, so here's a template that I have. Now I am providing templates that you can download on my website, jessamatutorials.com. What you do is they'll be in a JPEG that you can copy and load onto your computer, and then you print them as onto a piece of paper, and then you cut those out and use them as a template. There'll be more detailed instructions along with the template, but there will be templates there, so be sure to check that out if you want a template that you can download. Okay, so I'm going to select an area that I like, bring over my craft knife, and gently use the template to trim out the bead. And I always want to keep my hands out the way. There we go. That's the first one. And then I want one down here as well. So I'm just figuring out the best spot. There we go. Be a little further down. because I want to get those tree trunks. Cut that out. Always being careful with my fingers. It looks worse on the camera. I know what I'm doing, don't worry, I won't cut myself. There we are. So there are our 2 beads. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take one for the moment and we are going to cover that with mica powder. So grab that, bring over my silver mica powder, take a nice fluffy brush, dip that into the mica powder, and then cover it. And this will give us a completely different effect. As you'll see in just a moment. Okay. And then I'll pack that away. And I will lift this up using my blade. And then I'll just get rid of the excess mica powder, like that. And now we can do both of them with alcohol inks. So there's the one. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just gently going to round this out because it's a little bit distorted. You can always cut these shapes freehand if you want. Most of these templates that I will be giving are actually freehand, like the ones that I gave in the Skinner Blend, well, the Colours of the Rainbow bead tutorial. Those actually were cut freehand as I showed in the tutorial. But if you guys want templates, they will be on the website, but you can always cut them freehand. Okay, now we're ready to move on to the alcohol inks. So I'm going to first be using turquoise, and you can use any of the alcohol inks other than the silver first if you want. The silver is the last one you want to use. And I'll just paint using my little brush to the areas that I want. And now don't worry, the first time round we will be making a few more passes with the ink during the different baking processes, because it's going to be baked at least 3 times, because we need to bake it the first time to set it up, then the second time we need to bake it to do the sides and the second coat of alcohol ink, and then the last time we are going to be antiquing it, and so we need to bake it to get the paint to set. So there'll be at least 3 baking processes. So I'm just going to be putting on the ink, and it doesn't have to be precise at all. You can have it spilling over edges and things like that if you want. Okay. So that's the first one. I'm happy with how much that's got. Now the silver one is going to look quite different because the silver mica powder decreases the colour saturation. So the colours will be a lot duller on this one because of the mica powders. And so this one will need quite a bit of ink to actually make any colour impact. But it will always have a wonderful silver tint, and so it looks completely different. It has a more metallic look to it that you won't get with this one. So I just play around with the inks as much as I want. So I'm about happy with the turquoise. Now I am going to move on to the mermaid. I'll just open that one up. And now all of these colours match the ribbon that I showed in the beginning, the sari ribbon. And so that's the beads that I'm going to be making. So if you've got a different colour ribbon or cord, whatever you want to put on, match your colours to go with the cord, as that's the whole point of the project. As you'll see later on when we string, it's very important that the bead matches perfectly with the colour of the cord. And so I'm now highlighting the tree branches and the areas around the trees with this colour. And I'll do the same on the other side. Now I'm going to move on to the pool. So I'll open that up. and brush that onto my brush, and I'm just going to let that spread into just random patterns. I'm not going to even brush this one on, because since we've got the alcohol ink all over the place already, this will automatically spread quite easily, so it will look nice. Don't want to put too much on, but I want enough that it's going to make an impact. Okay, so you can see that this one already is a lot lighter. We're using the exact same inks, so you can see the difference between the two. And you'll see a difference when they're baked as well. Now I'm going to use the patina, and this one I want to use just a little bit because it's quite strong and it's quite green, and the ribbon that we're using isn't too green, so we just want little bits here and there to highlight. There we are. So I'm quite happy with that. We will need to go over it again when it is baked, and I'll show that later on, but for now this is what they are going to look like. So I will just gently pick those up and move them off to the side, and I'm going to clean up this area. Okay, so now we're ready to cut out our holes. So we'll start with the silver one, and I'm going to bring over the cutters. So here are the cutters that I've chosen, and these are from a set on Fire Mountain Gems. And I'm going to start with a large one and cut out, then move down to the smallest and cut out. Then pick that up, then pop those out, just like that. So that one's now ready for a backing, which I will show in just a minute. Now bring over the other one, and this one I'm going to use these two. There we are. Okay, pick that up again. And work those pieces out. There we are. Okay, and then if they're a little distorted, I'll just pop them back into shape. Okay, so now these ones are ready for a backing, and so I'll bring over the backing. And before I forget with this one, we need to make sure that we put some silver alcohol ink in it. I almost forgot. So just bring over the silver and make sure you give it a good shake, because it's got particles in here, so it's not like the other inks that are kind of opaque. Oh, not opaque, translucent. This one is opaque, so you're not going to be able to see. So I'll gently go across the trees areas, because I only want to highlight those bits, and I'm being very gentle not to spill anywhere else. And now this dries very quickly, quicker than the other alcohol inks. Okay, oops, it comes out. It can be a little hard to get out of the bottle sometimes, because the particles in here can actually bung up the end. So just, if it gives you trouble, just shake it again and it should be fine. Okay, so now they're ready for the backing. Almost forgot the most important part. So I'll put those to the side, and then we can do the backing. Okay, so here's our black clay. It was run through on the third thinnest setting of my pasta machine, and now I want to texture it. Now I'm going to be using an acrylic roller that I got off of eBay for a few cents, and these are for the cake decorating. And I'm going to roll it across the surface of my clay, pressing hard, because this has texture in it. It's got this rigid texture, so it's quite nice if you get it right. And then what I'll do is I'll bring over my mica powder pot. So there it is, and then take just a little bit and gently rub over the surface of the clay. And this takes a little while, of course. And actually, you know what I might do? Actually, I'm going to take my brush and just coat my entire piece. That will look nice. And then when I sand the back, we'll sand off this texture so the black gets exposed under the mica powders. That would look more interesting, I think. So I'll just gently cover it with mica powder in the general area that I need. Okay. And always remember to close up your mica powders when you're done with them, because otherwise you can have accidents. I have accidents continually in the past where I forgot to close the mica powder and then my hand swung around for some reason and I knocked the powder over, and well, you can imagine the rest. So just make sure that you always close your mica powder pots when you're done. And I'm just trimming this up. Okay, now we're ready to lift that up, and I'll just show you how nice and silvery it is. And just brush your hand over it and it will get the raised areas, and this will get rid of any excess powder that's going to stick to your fingers and cause problems. So I'm just going to lightly rub over the surface. Okay, and so that will rub in that mica powder and avoid problems. Okay, then we will flip this over, and I'm going to trim it in half because we have 2 beads to cover. And I'll bring over the first one, just like that, and then gently pat it down. And these have been airing for a little while, so the alcohol inks has dried, and we'll just trim that up. And excuse me if my head gets in the way for a minute or so, because I have to lean quite close here to be able to see where I'm trimming. There we are. And then just go around and make sure that that matched up nicely. So I might want to go back and trim a little bit, but there's the back. Then I'll go with my, excuse my head if I'm getting in. I'll just gently trim around to make sure that there's no black lip, because we don't want a black lip. There we go. So I always take a good amount of time tidying up my beads, because it makes a big difference later on. And although it is boring, and it's nowhere near as fun as actually doing the technique itself, it is necessary if you want it to look really good. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Got a little white piece over there. Get rid of it. Okay, and now we're going to cut out these circles again. So I'm just going to measure the circle that I need, and we'll move this out the way because my work area is getting cluttered. And then we will cut it out and then rotate just to make a nice cut. And there we go. And then we'll bring over the next one and cut and rotate to make a nice cut. And there is what it looks like. So that's the first one, and there's the back. And then we will do the exact same for the other one. Okay, so now that we've done both the backs, you need to decide which one you want for the bracelet and which one you want for the necklace. Personally, I want this one for the necklace and this one for the bracelet. So this one is going to go onto a jar. Now the thing is, because of the mica powder on the back, it might be a little hard to get it to stick there. Don't worry, if it's not sticking completely, you can pop that in the oven, and as it bakes it will generally settle down, and then when it comes out, straight when it's hot, you come and with a glove for heat of course, and then you just press down gently while it's hot and wait for it to cool, and then it will curve to the jar perfectly. But try to get it down as best you can without squishing your texture. But it's because the mica powder is non-stick. So that one will bake like that, and this one will bake flat. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put them in at Primo's recommended temperature and bake them for half an hour at that temperature, because we're going to be doing multiple bakes. So I'll pop these in the oven and then we can come back and I'll show you how to continue. Okay, so they're out of the oven and they're almost cool. So now we are ready to add another layer of alcohol inks, but the first thing that we need to do is smear along these sides because, well, they're a little untidy. So I'll bring over some black polymer clay because that is what we are going to be needing. So here's some black polymer clay, and we want to warm it up. This has already been conditioned, but it's a little cold, so we want to rub it in our hands to warm it up. There we go. And we'll break off a tiny little piece because we don't need much, we need very little to do this. Okay, and then we'll roll it into a long-ish log, pinch it along the edge of the bead like that, and then smear. And now you're not going to get it completely right the first time. Often you have to give it a few goes, so just go back into the areas that you missed and smear again. And now I've done a tutorial on this. It's a technique I like to call the Jessama smear, and I will include a link to the tutorial I show so that you can learn some tips and tricks for this. Because although it seems easy, there are a few things that you need to look out for because it will make it a lot easier. So I do that for both of these beads, and then once we've done that we can retint with the alcohol inks, because you can see it, this one's a little plain. And so just smooth out your edges, make sure that you've covered them properly. If you run into problems when it comes to the corner of a bead, because you've got to have a corner over there, just squish a piece of clay down and then smear from both sides. And that should fix up the problem. And so I'll do that for both these beads. Okay, so we are just about finished with the sides. As you can see, just want to make sure that they're nice and smooth, because you can't sand these a lot once they're baked because of they are such a thin layer. So just make sure that you go around and get rid of any fingerprints. Okay, then what we are going to do in a little while is we're going to paint the insides over here with black liquid clay, but that will come last. What we want to do now is we want to take our craft knife and we actually want to etch. Don't cut too deep, but you want to cut a deep enough hollow that later on, when we antique these, that the paint will get into those hollows and pick up the texture. So just make sure that you go deep enough for that. Okay. And I'm doing this before we do another cut of alcohol ink, because the alcohol ink to a certain degree can also pick up on the edges as well. So So we're doing this to just add some more interest. So you want to do that all across the clay. I'm not going to do it on the branches so that I can make a distinction between that bits of the texture. Okay, so that's the first one. And then this one you have to be a little bit more careful with because it's domed, so I have to hold it while I'm doing these etches. But basically you're just doing the exact same thing. Okay, so now that they've both been etched, you can see at this one the edges show up a bit more because of the mica powders, but they've both been etched. So now we're going to bring over our alcohol ink again, and I'm going to start with the turquoise. And I'll just dab some of that onto my brush, and I'm just going to use that to clean off my brush. So there we go. Now I'm going to just paint in the areas where I want, and I'm going to go over the tree limbs again, but because they had that silver alcohol ink on them, they're going to look a little different, so that will be nice. And if I want, I can add the silver alcohol ink on again. So you can see that the clay accepts the alcohol ink much better now. It's got much more contrast than it did before, so it has a higher saturation of colour. So happy with that one. Now you got to be careful of the edges. You don't want to be putting too many finger marks on the edges of your beads, so handle it delicately. Now this one you're still going to not have as much saturation as you did with the other one because it's still got the mica powders under it, but the clay has cured, so you should get a higher saturation than you did before. Basically for the ones that contain mica powders, you're just going to have to go over and over and over again with the alcohol ink to get a nice colour, which is fine. And you're always going to have that silvery look, which is what we want. But it's just something to know. So basically I've gone over with the turquoise there, and then now what I've done, since that was my main colour, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put in slight accents of the other colour. So this is the mermaid, and I'm just going to put in patches where I want it to be. Then I'll go back to the other patches and just smooth them out, just like that. And that is what I call shading, because you're accenting certain areas. And there's no real logic behind where you put the ink. I'm just choosing specific areas to put certain colours. And so I do that with basically all of the inks, and you're going to go over and over layering it, and the more you do that, the better it will look. Okay, so I've shaded them the way I want to. So this one, the silver can still be seen slightly, but it's not pure silver at the moment, so it just kind of highlights those branches. And there's the back. We'll take care of the back in a little while, but for the moment that's what that one looks like. And this one is definitely more silvery than this one. And the sides are also okay, so I've checked that. Now what we're going to do is we are going to do the inside over here. And so I'm going to bring over my brush again, and I'm going to be using black Kato liquid. And I'll take a little bit on my brush and then dab it around the inside. And you don't want to be putting on too much. You want to put on enough that it appears black, but you don't want to put on so much that it's like dripping all over the place, because then that's going to cause more harm than anything else. So just go around. Making sure to cover all the areas, and this is what we'll do on this one as well. And this is how we will tidy it up, because I can't do the smear in there. Okay, there we go. So that's tidied it up. Now you're going to get little speckles around the outside. Just gently smooth those away, like that. And then you'll do the exact same for this one and the last hole in this one. Okay, so that's about it for now. We are going to pop these back in the oven for another half an hour at Primo's recommended temperature. This one is going to go back onto the jar that it was baked on originally to keep its dome shape, and this one will just go on a flat piece of paper on top of a ceramic tile. And then we'll bake them for half an hour, and then we can come back and antique them. Okay, so our beads are now finally finished, and so we can now antique them and put alcohol ink, though we want to do the alcohol ink first. So I'm going to bring over the mermaid and gently going to rub that across the surface. And each layer will build up that saturation. So the more alcohol inks you add after it's baked, the better. So you do want to add it in the beginning. Okay, so that's it for the mermaid for that one. And I bring over this one. And this is all about creating shades and things in the bead. It's very important to do this because it just adds to the dimension of the bead. So you want to make sure that you get a lot of alcohol inks on here in different areas. Maybe have some overlapping colours, because the more you do that, the more interesting and cool the design will look. So I'm just making sure I get lots of alcohol ink on here to make sure that my colour saturation is high enough. Okay, and then we'll move on to the next colour, which is going to be turquoise, because that's the next darkest colour. And I'm not even going to clean off my brush. It's okay to have cross colour contamination in this sort of project if all of your colours are very similar to each other. So the turquoise has barely a jump between the mermaid, so it's okay to have those two intermingle on your brush. There we go. I'll move around and brush this area. And so these are the two main colours, and then the other ones are more for accents really. Make sure to blend the two colours as well. There we go, so that's that bead, and then we'll do the other one as well. Okay, now we're going to move on to the other colours. So here is the patina. We're just going to add little bits of that to areas like the tree branches here, just to highlight a few areas. So these aren't the ones that you'd use to cover the entire piece. You just want it in different areas to highlight areas that you want people to focus on, like these trees. And you'd basically do the same on the side as well. You'd basically highlight the trees using that colour, and that is what you would give you that shading. It's okay if it spills out a little bit, that's just fine. This is a very lenient project. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Okay, then we'd move on to the next colour, which is the pool. And that one I'm kind of just going to drip around in areas that I feel look nice. So that one I'm not even going to use to highlight areas. I'm just going to use it to kind of blend all these colours together so we've got no sharp jagged lines. So just go over my entire piece and just smooth with the brush to get rid of any definite lines. Like there, that needs to get rubbed out. There too. And then on this one you do basically the same. Just drop it around in areas you want and then use it to smooth out areas. Because you don't want any jagged alcohol lines. Okay, and then we'd antique it. And to antique, you just need some nice black paint and a soft brush, and I'm just going to brush that on. I'll just show you the one, and you basically just want to cover the entire bead. And you want to really work it into those crevices, so spend a good amount of time working it into all those little gaps, because that's the place where the paint's going to stay. Okay, just like that. Then you'd bring over a cloth, and this is the cloth that I like to use, and you'll just basically rub the bead as though you were sanding over the surface, like that, and that will get off most of the paint. And then you go with the cloth and you rub into those individual areas, and if you need to, you can also wet the cloth, and that will help get rid of some of that paint. Because you only want a light antique, but it's going to give that gritty look. So you can decide if you want to antique it or not. You don't have to antique it. I just like the look that it gives, but I don't like having too much paint on here, so I'll work out quite a bit. Okay, so you can see the difference between these two. So I'd antique this one as well. Okay, so I've finished antiquing each of these. Need to go give my hands a wash now, but in the meantime, this is what they look like. So they look kind of nice and gritty, and then they're going to go alongside this, so it's going to look pretty cool, I think. Oops. And we still need to clean up the, well, not clean up, but we need to give the back a bit of a brush off as well, because we want to expose these pebbles a bit. But I think that's going to look really nice, and it's going to be strung through these holes, so that will be done in the next part of the tutorial. But for now, these are going to go in to bake for another half an hour at Primo's recommended temperature, and this is going to be the last bake for them. So bake them again. This one's also going to get popped onto that glass to keep domed, and they'll bake for another half an hour, and then we can start sanding, and then we can finish them off. So they're out of the oven and they're completely cooled, so you can see the sides are all nice, and inside here is nice and black, and so it's just about ready. We just need to go around and give it a quick sand on the back. And the reason we put it in the oven again was mainly to bake the paint on, because otherwise the paint can come off a little bit when you wear it, which isn't something that you want to do. So I will bring over the polishing papers, which are these, and they come in all of these sizes, so I'll just bring those over so you can see there's lots of them. So I'll start from the lowest one, which is I think a 400, and then it goes all the way up to a 8000, and I'll just give the back a very light sand. So I want to sand and then have a look, and give it a quick sand again and then have a look, because I don't want to go too far. And I might even just do it the opposite way around so I can control where I'm sanding, because we just want to expose those pebbles a little bit. So it doesn't take much sanding, because you're just sanding away the mica powder. Almost done. So it's very quick. Okay, and you can see that in those places where the roller was a little bit textured, you can see it, you have this nice cool look to it. Now I'm going to bring over my other papers, and I'm just going to go down through the higher grits, going up to the highest grit I can, so that this black will look nice and glossy. And I'll do the same with the other bead, and then we can also sand the sides. So as well as the back, you want to sand the sides from your lowest grit to your highest grit so that they're nice and glossy, and then we can pop some Renaissance wax on it. Okay, so I've finished pendant number 1, and I just wanted to show you the difference between this one's back and this one's back. So just thought I'd show you the stark difference, because even I'm surprised at how nice it looks. I'm really happy with how this turned out. Didn't expect it to come out quite this good. And the sides are nice and shiny as well, but the back looks really cool. So now I'm just going to do this one, but I wanted to show you a comparison between the two because they're quite different. Okay, so here they are now that they're finished being sanded. I'm really happy with this look. And here are the fronts, so both sides look really nice. Now what we're going to do is we are going to put some Renaissance wax on. So I'll just bring over the cloth that I use. And I'll bring over this pendant, and now we want to cover the entire pendant in Renaissance wax. Now, I forgot to mention, when you're sanding, don't sand the front. You only want to sand the sides and the back. Okay, and then I'll just dip my cloth into the Renaissance wax, and then I'll burnish my piece over it to get that Renaissance wax on. You don't need a lot of Renaissance wax. You actually need very little to make an impact. Okay, then I'll do the front as well. So the front might actually need a little bit more. So just dip it in again. And then I'll burnish over the top as well. Now you can expect some of the alcohol inks and mica powders and things to come off on your cloth. So the cloth that you're using, make sure that you're using a dedicated cloth. And also just don't worry if you start seeing little blue bits coming off. That's entirely natural. You can expect that to happen. It's actually better this way because then all of the bits that were going to come off will come off. And that means they won't get on anybody's clothing later on by accident. Okay, and so that's the back of that one, and the front and the sides. Then I'll just give it a light burnish. You don't need a buffing wheel. A buffing wheel is definitely better, but you definitely don't need it. You can get a pretty good look just by hand buffing. So this side's all nice and shiny, and this side's kind of matte and rustic, though the stuff has been sealed now. So I'll do the same for the other pendants as well. Okay, so now that we've finished buffing these, you can see that they both have a really nice satin sheen on the top. The sides are really shiny because we baked it, because we sanded it, and the backs are really shiny. So these could be used as double-sided pendants if you wanted to. And the Renaissance wax has also increased the colour saturation, so you can see that the colours are a bit more rich than before. This one's colours are a little bit more muted and it has a silver tint to it because of the mica powder, so you can see a difference between the two over there, but I'm really happy with them. So this one's going to be turned into a bracelet and this one's going to be a necklace. So I'll be doing that in part 2 of this tutorial. I'll be showing you how to create end caps for the sari ribbon, and I'll also show you how to string it to create a bracelet and a necklace. So that will be part 2. Now if you're watching this tutorial on YouTube, the part 2 will be on my website already, so be sure to check that out. If you watch it on YouTube, it will be on my website and I'll provide a link for that. And if you are interested in the texture stamp that I have used to make these beads, I will have it available on my Etsy shop for $4, so you'll be able to get that, or you can even get a set of a bunch of different tree themed pendants for less. So if you're interested, be sure to check it out, as that means that you don't have to carve your own texture, and I'm really happy with this texture because it has a really organic look to it. So I do hope that this tutorial was helpful to you, and as always, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.